and filling is not one of them. Sit down, my good fellow, and have a cigarette to soothe your nerves. I insist. Whiskey? The worst thing for you. Here's some coffee that I was brewing when you came in. Now listen to me. You speak of another chance. What do you mean? Another chance at baccarat? Not if I know it. You think the luck must turn. Suppose it didn't. We should only have made bad worse. No, my dear chap, you've plunged enough. Do you put yourself in my hands, or do you not? Very well. Then you plunge no more, and I undertake not to present my cheque. Unfortunately, there are the other men. And still more unfortunately, Bunny, I'm as hard up at this moment as you are yourself." It was my turn to stare at Raffles. "You?" I vociferated. "You hard up? How am I to sit here and believe that?" "Did I refuse to believe it of you?" he returned, smiling. "And with your own experience, do you think that because a fellow has rooms in this place, and belongs to a club or two, and plays a little cricket, he must necessarily have a balance at the bank? I tell you, my dear man, that at this moment I'm as hard up as you ever were. I have nothing but my wits to live on, absolutely nothing else. It was as necessary for me to win some money this evening as it was for you. We're in the same boat, Bunny. We'd better pull together."
"Together?" I jumped at it. "I'll do anything in this world for you, Raffles," I said, "if you really mean that you won't give me away. Think of anything you like and I'll do it. I was a desperate man when I came here, and I'm just as desperate now. I don't mind what I do if only I can get out of this without a scandal." Again I see him, leaning back in one of the luxurious chairs with which his room was furnished. I see his indolent, athletic figure, his pale, sharp, clean-shaven features, his curly black hair, his strong, unscrupulous mouth. And again I feel the clear beam of his wonderful eye, cold and luminous as a star, shining into my brain, sifting the very secrets of my heart.
"I wonder if you mean all that," he said at length. "You do in your present mood, but who can back his mood to last? Still, there's hope when a chap takes that tone. Now I think of it, too, you were a plucky little devil at school. You once did me a rather good turn, I recollect. Remember it, Bunny? Well, wait a bit, and perhaps I'll be able to do you a better one. Give me time to think."
He got up, lit a fresh cigarette, and fell to pacing the room once more, but with a slower and more thoughtful step, and for a much longer period than before. Twice he stopped at my chair as though on the point of speaking, but each time he checked himself and resumed his stride in silence. Once he threw up the window, which he had shut some time since, and stood for some moments leaning out into the fog which filled the Albany courtyard. Meanwhile a clock on the chimney-piece struck one, and one again for the half-hour, without a word between us. Yet I not only kept my chair with patience, but I acquired an incongruous equanimity in that half-hour. Insensibly I had shifted my burden to the broad shoulders of this splendid friend, and my thoughts wandered with my eyes as the minutes passed. The room was the good-sized square one with the folding doors, the marble mantelpiece, and the gloomy old-fashioned distinction peculiar to the Albany. It was charmingly furnished and arranged, with the right amount of negligence and the right amount of taste. What struck me most, however, was the absence of the usual insignia of a cricketer's den. Instead of the conventional rack of war-worn bats, a carved oak bookcase, with every shelf in a litter, filled the better part of one wall, and where I looked for cricketing groups I found reproductions of such works as Love and Death and The Blessed Damozel in dusty frames and different parallels. The man might have been a minor poet instead of an athlete of the first water, but there had always been a fine streak of aestheticism in his complex composition. Some of these very pictures I had myself dusted in his study at school, and they set me thinking of yet another of his many sides, and of the little incident to which he had just referred. Everybody knows how largely the tone of a public school depends on that of the 11, and on the character of the captain of cricket in particular. And I have never heard it denied that in A.J. Raffles's time our tone was good, or that such influence as he troubled to exert was on the side of the angels. Yet it was whispered in the school that he was in the habit of parading the town at night in loud checks and a false beard. It was whispered and disbelieved. I alone knew it for a fact, for night after night I had pulled the rope up after him when the rest of the dormitory were asleep, and kept awake by the hour to let it down again on a given signal. Well, one night he was overbold and within an ace of ignominious expulsion in the heyday of his fame. Consummate daring and extraordinary nerve on his part, aided doubtless by some little presence of mind on mine, averted the untoward result, and no more need be said of a discreditable incident. But I cannot pretend to have forgotten it in throwing myself on this man's mercy in my desperation, and I was wondering how much of his leniency was owing to the fact that Raffles had not forgotten it either, when he stopped and stood over my chair once more.
"I've been thinking of that night we had the narrow squeak," he began. "Why do you start?"
I was thinking of it too. He smiled, as though he had read my thoughts.
"Well, you were the right sort of little beggar then, Bunny. You didn't talk and you didn't flinch. You asked no questions and you told no tales. I wonder if you're like that now."
"I don't know," said I, slightly puzzled by his tone. "I've made such a mess of my own affairs that I trust myself about as little as I'm likely to be trusted by anybody else. Yet I never in my life went back on a friend. I will say that. Otherwise, perhaps, I mightn't be in such a hole to-night."
"Exactly,"
said Raffles, nodding to himself, as though in assent to some hidden train of thought.
"Exactly what I remember of you. And I'll bet it's as true now as it was 10 years ago. We don't alter, Bunny, we only develop. I suppose neither you nor I are really altered since you used to let down that rope and I used to come up it hand over hand. You would stick at nothing for a pal, what?"
"At nothing in this world," I was pleased to cry.
"Not even at a crime?"
said Raffles, smiling. I stopped to think, for his tone had changed, and I felt sure he was chaffing me. Yet his eyes seemed as much in earnest as ever, and for my part I was in no mood for reservations. "No, not even at that," I declared. "Name your crime, and I'm your man." He looked at me, one moment in wonder, and another moment in doubt, then turned the matter off with a shake of his head, and the little cynical laugh that was all his own.
"You're a nice chap, Bunny. A real desperate character, what? Suicide one moment, and any crime I like the next. What you want is a drag, my boy, and you did well to come to a decent law-abiding citizen with a reputation to lose. None the less, we must have that money to-night, by hook or crook."
"To-night, Raffles?"
"The sooner the better. Every hour after 10 o'clock to-morrow morning is an hour of risk. Let one of those checks get round to your own bank, and you and it are dishonored together. No, we must raise the wind to-night, and reopen your account first thing to-morrow, and I rather think I know where the wind can be raised."
"At 2 o'clock in the morning?"
"Yes."
"But how? But where, at such an hour?"
"From a friend of mine here in Bond Street."
"He must be a very intimate friend."
"Intimate's not the word. I have the run of his place and a latchkey all to myself."
"And you would knock him up at this hour of the night?"
"If he's in bed."
"And it's essential that I should go in with you?"
"Absolutely."
"Then I must. But I'm bound to say I don't like the idea, Raffles."
"Do you prefer the alternative?"
asked my companion with a sneer.
"No, hang it, that's unfair,"
he cried apologetically in the same breath.
"I quite understand. It's a beastly ordeal, but it would never do for you to stay outside. I tell you what, you shall have a peg before we start. Just one. There's the whiskey.